We are living inside a mystery box, and it's entirely possible that a mighty builder exists, yet struggles to figure out how to say hello. Here's the thing most of us forget. We are all participants in a mystery that has never been solved, and for the first time in human history, we might actually be close to getting the answer. Not in 1,000 years, not in 100, possibly within the span of a single lifetime. Yours. The truth is, we are trapped in a puzzle we never asked to solve, and most people have simply stopped looking for the exit. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you wake up inside a room, a strange, vast, beautiful room, filled with intricate machinery, swirling patterns of light, and objects you can't quite name. You don't remember how you got here. You don't know who built it. You don't even know if there's an outside. But you're hungry, and there's fruit on a table, so you eat. And then you notice other people in the room. Some are building tools, some are arguing, some are just sitting quietly, watching the patterns on the walls. Years pass, generations, and slowly, you and the others start to figure out how the room works. You learn that if you drop something, it falls, cold turns water solid, fire burns, time moves forward. You develop rules, laws, predictable patterns. And somewhere along the way, you get so good at understanding the machinery that you forget the original question. How did you get here? Who built this place? And is there something beyond these walls? This is, in a sense, the story of human existence. We live inside what we might call a mystery box. Not a literal box, of course, but a bounded reality with rules we can observe and mechanisms we can decode. Over thousands of years, we've become remarkably skilled at understanding how the box operates. Gravity, chemistry, biology, we've mapped the gears and levers with extraordinary precision. But the bigger question, the one that sits quietly underneath everything else, remains unanswered. What made the box? Is there a why? Is there a before? And here's what's fascinating. We don't actually know if the box is all there is. Some people are quite confident that it must be. Others are equally confident there's something beyond. But if we're being honest, truly honest, neither position has definitive proof. It's somewhere in the realm of uncertainty. A coin flip. Maybe something, maybe nothing. Most days, life feels small. Emails, bills, deadlines, groceries, a loose screw in the door that never quite gets fixed. Our attention is consumed by tiny practical problems, the kind that fit neatly into calendars and checklists. We spend our days meticulously dusting the furniture of our lives. We worry about the scuff marks on the floor, the flickering light in the hallway, and the small, persistent leaks of daily stress. We are so occupied with the maintenance of our immediate surroundings that we rarely take a moment to press our ears against the walls and wonder what exists on the other side. Most feel this uncertainty is irrelevant to daily life. We are, after all, brief flickers of consciousness. A human life rarely stretches beyond a century, while the box has been sitting here for billions of years. What are the odds that the secret would be revealed during our tiny window of existence? It feels like trying to understand the plot of a 1,000-page novel by looking at a single comma on page 400. So why bother asking? This is where it gets interesting. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine you could build your own box. Not inherit one, not be born into one, but actually construct one from scratch. You set the rules, you define the physics, you choose the starting conditions, and then you press a button and let it run. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is something we're approaching. Perhaps within the next few decades, we may have the capability to create simulated environments complex enough that intelligence could emerge within them. Digital spaces where entities could exist, learn, wonder, and eventually ask their own version of the ultimate question: what is this place and why are we here? We would become, in a strange and humbling way, box makers. And here's the part that might shift your perspective. As box makers, we would have complete freedom over when and how to reveal ourselves to the inhabitants. We could wait 1,000 simulated years, or we could introduce ourselves within the first simulated hour. There would be no fixed timeline. The answer could come whenever we decided to give it. Now flip that around. If we can imagine becoming box makers, then it's at least possible, even if we can't prove it, that we ourselves are inside a box made by something or someone else. And if that's even plausible, then the assumption that the answer will never come, that no revelation is possible, starts to look less like wisdom and more like an untested belief. The argument has always been the mystery has persisted for thousands of years, so why would it resolve in the next 100? But that argument carries hidden assumptions. It assumes that the timeline is fixed, that nothing fundamental is changing about our capacity to discover or receive answers. And that brings us to what might be the most significant variable in this entire equation. Something is happening right now that has never happened before in human history. We are building minds, not human minds exactly, something different, something that processes information in ways we're only beginning to understand. Tools that can find patterns in data we could never have analyzed ourselves. Systems that can decode, translate, and illuminate connections that would have taken us centuries to recognize. Think about what this might mean for our mystery box. For thousands of years, we've been searching for answers with the cognitive equipment we were born with. Remarkable equipment, to be sure, but limited. We can only process so much. We can only see so far. We can only hold so many variables in our heads at once. But imagine if the decoders got faster, much faster. Imagine if we could map the patterns of the universe, the strange regularities in background radiation, the mathematical relationships hidden in physical constants, the unexplained correlations that have always seemed like noise. Imagine if we could actually decode all of that within a single generation. The answer to the biggest question might already exist. It might be embedded in the fabric of reality itself, perhaps written in a language we simply haven't learned to read yet, like a message painted across the sky in colors we've never had the tools to perceive. And now, for the first time, we might be building those tools. But let me introduce a complication, because this isn't as simple as just building better microscopes or telescopes. There's a challenge we might call the recognition problem. Imagine tomorrow you created a simulation, a digital box with its own physics, its own starting conditions, its own potential for emerging complexity. You press start and you wait. Eventually, patterns form, structures emerge. Something that might be intelligence develops. Would you recognize it? If you threw countless atoms into a void and waited for them to self-organize, would you immediately notice when some of them formed the pattern of a conscious mind? It might not look like anything you expect. It might not behave in ways you'd identify as awareness. You might be looking right at intelligence and mistake it for noise. And even if you recognized it, could you communicate with it? Would you share a common language, a common frame of reference? Any bridge at all between your form of existence and theirs? Imagine we realize something inside the simulation is asking questions. How would we answer? Do we carve a message into its sky, alter some cosmic constant and hope it notices? We tend to assume that any intelligence capable of creating a box would automatically know how to contact its inhabitants. But think about our own trajectory. We're moving toward the ability to create such simulations. We are nowhere close to omnipotent. We're fumbling, learning, improving. It's entirely possible that a box maker could create something profound and then struggle to figure out how to say hello. And if communication fails from the inside, it would look like silence, endless silence. Thousands of years with no reply, plenty of time for the inhabitants to conclude that the box is all there is. Not because that conclusion is true, but because no answer arrived on their schedule. But what if there have already been attempts to communicate with us? Not in the obvious ways we imagine. Not a booming voice from the clouds or a message spelled out in stars, but something subtler, something embedded in the patterns we haven't yet learned to decode, a signal in the noise that we've been looking at for centuries without recognizing what it is. We might be like someone staring at a television screen full of snow, not realizing that if we just tuned the dial slightly, a clear image would emerge. So here's where we are. We live in a mystery that has never been solved. For most of human history, the reasonable assumption was that it probably wouldn't be solved, not in any individual's lifetime. The window seemed too short. The gap between our questions and any possible answers seemed too vast. But that window might be expanding. The tools we're building could extend human lifespans in ways we can barely imagine. What if the next generation doesn't get 80 years, but 200? What if some people alive today see the dawn of the next millennium? The assumption that you won't be around when the answer arrives starts to look shakier. And simultaneously, our capacity to decode the universe is accelerating. The patterns we couldn't analyze are becoming analyzable. The signals we couldn't detect are becoming detectable. The languages we couldn't read are becoming readable. This doesn't mean the answer will definitely come. There are no guarantees here. This isn't a prediction. It's a possibility, but it's a possibility that didn't exist a generation ago. I'm not claiming to know what the answer is, or even if there is one. I'm not suggesting any particular worldview or belief system. This isn't about religion or science or philosophy, at least not in the way we usually frame those categories. This is about curiosity and patience, and the strange, hopeful, possibly naive idea that the mystery might not be permanent. For most of human history, the escape room had no apparent exit. The puzzle seemed designed to be unsolvable, and so many of us understandably gave up looking. We focused on the immediate, the practical, the questions we could actually answer. But something is shifting. We're not just inhabitants of the box anymore. We're becoming capable of building boxes ourselves. And in that process, we're learning things about what it means to create, to hide, to reveal, to communicate across vast differences in form and understanding. Maybe that knowledge, that experience of becoming creators ourselves, will help us recognize something we've been missing all along. Maybe the act of building our own mysteries will teach us how to solve the one we're living inside. So here we are, trapped in a puzzle. But maybe, just maybe, the puzzle is closer to being solved than it's ever been. The tools are getting sharper, the window is getting wider, the patterns are getting clearer, and the answer, if it exists, might be waiting in plain sight, encoded in the stars, hidden in the numbers, whispered in the background radiation of a universe that's been trying to tell us something since the beginning. You and I might actually be among the first generations of humans who have a real chance of finding out, not a certainty, a chance, a possibility. And that possibility, that slim, flickering, extraordinary possibility, might be reason enough to stay curious. Because for the first time in history, the escape room timer might not be counting down. It might be counting up. And the exit might be closer than any of us ever dared to imagine. So perhaps it's worth sticking around, paying attention, keeping your eyes on the patterns, because one day, maybe soon, maybe in your lifetime, the walls of the box might finally make sense. And when that happens, you'll want to be there to see it.